the game was different, right? The rules was different. The ball
Oh,
was different.
the Euro style is different in America.
The Euro style was a lot different than America.
That's the first time y'all seen that Eurostepping, huh?
Absolutely.
My name is Len Busch, and I'm basketball coach in the UK. I coach Seven Oaks Suns WBBL women and a bunch of junior teams as well over the years. From Chicago. I coached and taught in New York City for 10 years in a big high school in Queens back in the 90s. And I've been coaching in the UK for 23 years now.
Jeez, 23.
I know.
That's a while, man. That's a while.
Yeah.
Coach, it's great to have you. Definitely couldn't start this second series without having you as my first guest. Definitely had to have you on, and not to dwell too much, but definitely a big factor of why I do what I do and where I am today. So before we start, just a big thank you again, as always.
No, well, any help, anytime. I think you're doing a great job, doing great things. I love seeing each step along the way, and I'm sure there are many more.
Thanks, Coach. Roughly how many players would you say you've helped place in the US?
So directly, players of mine, in the 20s, more than 20. But I've also, I just realized that I've talked to many other players from other programs or, who ask questions and I offer my advice and opinions on. But those people probably had multiple sources of information.
Okay. Yeah, that's quite a bit. Why do you think that the US basketball system is preferential or was preferential for those players that you helped place?
Well, it's a free education for the ones that get full scholarships. It's the facilities in the States are incredible, and the just the experience of going to America to go to school is attractive for some, and for many kids, they just have the impression that basketball in the U.S. is a much bigger deal, which it almost certainly is, and they see it as a big milestone achievement for them to get offered a scholarship to go play in the States.
Yeah, I agree. There is a lot of a sense of achievement, which a lot of these players have, and coaches and families, which they should. I think in general, just celebrating any win, anything that you set out to achieve and you achieve it, I think that's a win in itself. So definitely. Can you break down the type of players that you've helped send to college?
Oh, all kinds from top level Division I talent to Division III players. Some who might have been a little bit more of a stretch to get a scholarship, but then we managed to find something for them. We've sent kids to junior colleges, Div 1 schools, Div 2 schools, Div 3 schools. It's just quite a big range.
Quite a big mix. What would be the biggest name? Like who's been the most successful going out to the States?
Well, that'd have to be Sheridan Green, who coached from a pretty young age. As a matter of fact, I probably met her around the same time I met you. She was 10.
At London Towers, yeah.
And she was a big, really talented player with a really bright future, and she had a lot of major Div 1 recruits or schools recruiting her, but she struggled to get get qualified by the NCAA. She struggled with her math, we tried a lot, and then she decided to go the junior college route, and we sent her to a junior college in New York City.
Nice.
And then after 2 years there, she went to the University of Tennessee. And then from there, she got a pro contract in Poland, and she's making a nice living, and continuing to get better.
That's nice. And it's just so, maybe not weird, it's the community in basketball is so small, and Paige, funny enough, was our first person that we had on the show, and Paige, played against Sheridan as well. And I'm sure Paige came through your she came through your program as well. You helped her out a little bit.
Well, no, she played for, I coached the under 18 national team, and she played for me 1 year there.
So, okay. So, it's just, everyone's kind of connected in their own little way, which I find is pretty good. Is there a specific position that gets recruited more often than others in your experience, in your time of fielding these players to the States?
I would say the player two players that are most in demand are the point guards, and skilled big players.
Okay.
So, but it's talented scorers in between, they get recruited as well, and they find homes. So I just know that I have a point guard now who's able to score, both shooting and getting to the rim, and can make the passes and run pick and roll, and is athletic enough. In the the school that has signed her is they're just saying that we can't find players like that. They either can get to the rim, or they can shoot and not get to the rim.
I like it. It's interesting, especially, and we'll touch on that a little bit later, but it's interesting to hear you say that, that specific school can't find players like that in demand, because I think generally, especially as a coach, you always say to your players, they're a dime a dozen, there's thousands of whatever. So it's a bit of interesting, it's really interesting of, are there players like that, a dime a dozen, or is it really specific qualities?
Well, and I mean a really good shooter, as well as the ability to get to the rim. So most of the point guards in college basketball in the States can get to the rim, but only the very, very best can add a really consistent shot from both the three and mid-range.
What processes are involved in getting a player to the States?
Well, it can be, there's so many avenues to get to the States now. Back, 8, 9, 10 years ago, it was up to the coach to help them. And, it would just be a simple matter of saying, reaching out to schools. You call them, I tell them who I am, and, various players that I've sent over the years, and get a little credibility from that, and then tell them about the player I have in mind. And then they ask for video, usually for a full game, and we send it out. And sometimes I've had players whose parents got very active in it, and they wrote and reached out to bunches of schools, and that works. I mean, coaches in America, they have assistant coaches, they cannot afford to ignore an email or message about a potential player. It's their job to investigate and see if that's a realistic fit for their program. So they'll almost always respond. I mean, they might take a look and then say, oh, no, that's no chance. But more often than not, they will talk to you.
That's funny. I guess it's a catch-22 for a college coach, and we're going to have some of them on later on in the season, especially with that question of, when you are getting 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 emails a day, a week, or whatever. A, do you go through all of them? And B, how do you know what's good from what's not? Obviously, you need to know the leagues and the standards and stuff. I've seen highlight tapes of 6'2" guys playing center and killing, dominating, and then you realize it's almost like a recreational league, and playing local league men. So it's pretty hard sometimes to weed them out.
Yeah, I mean, you'll find a lot of these. If you have players that have played for the national team, they tend to get a little more interested. And then if you can compare them to other players that they know of who are in their league or have come, before them, that'll help get their attention as well. So it's an interesting one. I don't know how many they get, but I've never had a problem getting a response from a school.
That's because you're big time, though, Coach. I mean, you see Len Busch's name come up on the email. You respond with the phone call. So, yeah, I got you.
I don't know.
As a coach, what qualities should a player have in order to be recruited?
Well, they need resilience.
Okay.
They need to be. They should be coachable. Yeah, I think. And then you need to be talented. So I mean, coaches. So they'll look. It's talent that gets you noticed. And then after that, when they're choosing between 2 or 3 players, if they see any sign of, behavior or attitude problems, then they're probably not gonna. You have to be very, very talented for them to take you with a poor attitude. So, they'll take a risk. A lot of places will take a risk with a super talented kid, but being coachable and a good citizen as well as talented is probably the best combination.
Now, yeah, I was wanting to know about that as well. Of the players that you've sent, would you say there's a good percentage, large percentage of players that you don't think were talent? If we're talking about the Division III players maybe, or a junior college player, where their talent isn't really that, they're not amazing, but because they're such an awesome kid, personality wise or work ethic or whatever, like they've managed to be picked up?
No, I think almost all of them have gone to the right place, and they were all pretty good kids. We haven't sent anybody who wasn't a good player in terms of their attitude, behavior, ability. And some improved. While Sheridan when she was a young player, she wasn't the hardest worker and the most motivated. She was by far the most talented, and she would frustrate other people in that she was capable of so much more. But by the time she got to junior college, she was I went to visit her, and she's the mature one on her team out of all the players. She's the leader. And then at Tennessee, it was the same. She was, she was seen as, very stable and, hard worker. So.
Fair enough. From the range of players that you've helped get across to the States, is there a common skill set? So, you've spoken about personality a little bit, and you said they are talented, but let's say, is there one thing in particular on the court that, all these players have been able to do?
Wow. That's an interesting one. No, there's no one skill set. So there could be some were there because of what they could do offensively. Some were there because of what they can do on both ends. Some were there and survived because they were a phenomenal defensive player as opposed to scorer. And then others, survived because they were just solid, really good teammates, good people to have on the team. They brought energy and they helped everybody else. So there are many roles, but they were all different. So if there was a quality, it would be that you have to have the kind of personality that can go, thousands of miles away to a new place and set up a new life and meet new people and then play in a very competitive environment where you may not be treated the same as you were when you were at home. You have to be tough enough to handle all that.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely see that quality wise or personality traits where they have to have that similarity across. What's the first steps, Coach, in getting a player recruited?
Well, the first step is finding out if that's what they want to do. That they're setting their sights, is going to the States something that you want to do? And that you can start asking that question at, 13, 14 years old. Is that your dream? That's what you want to do? And then you can use that as a coach, say, well, if that's what you want to do, then you need to up your work rate a little bit. And you're going to need to develop these areas of your game, to do it. Like you're going to have to, develop your shot, your handle, your vision, everything, all these things.
You know what? I like that answer. I really do like that answer because I don't know, initially thinking about that question, I don't think I would have started with asking them, is that what you really want? I think, I know when I was younger, I definitely looked at players and said, should be playing in the States, should be, that's your kind of level or your ceiling, your potential. But the fact of to start off with, and a lot of kids will come to, a coach and say, hey, I want to play in the States, but putting that out there first, really asking them that question, I think that's...
Well, I might also approach a player and say, they might not have thought of it, and I might say to them, you could go if you wanted to. It is possible. And so it could start that way as well.
Can you suggest why an international player might get recruited over a domestic American player?
Boy, that's a tricky one. I know that at the highest level, I know there are a number of programs that'll take European players, and they feel that they've been exposed to higher level basketball earlier.
Okay.
And so playing with a 24-second clock, playing with more freedom.
Okay. Yeah.
So they might they sort of build there are quite a few programs in the States that recruit a lot of foreign players with that in mind. And then you get the NBA teams like the Spurs over the years with their international players. So it could be that. It could be, I think there's a perception that the skill levels might be higher in Europe because in the US you just play. They play AAU. That may or may not be true. I don't know if that's still the case because you have so many more trainers now in the States working with kids to get their skill levels up. It could be that. It must be that. It could be that. Different attitudes, maybe. Don't know anymore. I think they're just looking. I think it's more a case of they're looking to discover something that nobody else has found. So there's a kid in England who's really talented, and it might be just under the radar. Not discovered yet in America. And so if we get in there early and develop a relationship, we can get, we'll get them. So I think it could be a little bit of that as well. Just there's all these players in Europe who are good enough to play in America. So let's go get some.
Let's go get them. Yeah. I guess in general, there's going to be less competition for those talented individuals or those that, you know what I mean,
Absolutely.
those players that can hang. So,
Yeah, because not every school's looking over here.
yeah. Fair enough. Knowing what it takes to be a college recruit, can you break down how much work goes into being recruited? So this is from like the training, this goes into like you doing the legwork of making, like how much, you know, because a lot of the kids, a lot of the players that I've spoken to, or, you know, that you have in your program, they get really upset. Oh, you know, Coach D didn't get me recruited, or, you know, I've been here for a year, and, you know, like, can you really tell us how much work goes into, you know, a player getting recruited?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a ton of work to me. Some are easier than others, but have had some where I worked pretty hard, you know, collecting, you know, you got to find a game film that shows them in a positive light that'll be attractive to a college coach. Then you got to, I remember back when I can remember, you know, when it used to be a case of putting it on a DVD and sending it, because you could, it wasn't so easy as it is now. Just send a link. No, it's not a ton of work. You're reaching out and contacting schools. I think now, once you get it started, then the schools contact the kids, and then the issue becomes the kid's not sure which one is better than the other. You know, this recruit I had this year, who was pretty, you know, could gone to any number of schools, you know, I will call and speak to the coach as well, and find out what they're thinking about the player, you know, what their plans are, and, you know, and then I'll also have a look at their, you know, the players that they have on the roster already, and the players that they're bringing in, you know, so just, is there realistically, is this player going to be able to play realistically? And then also, do they have a lot of transfers out of their program? Do they have stability? You know, you want to look at that as well.
Okay. I mean, you say it's not a lot. It sounds a bit, what about on the players' side? So let's say you've got you know, you said you've got a prospective player that's being recruited now. So yeah, how much work in terms of hours in the gym, extra sessions, game times, playing game, like how much work do they have to put in as well?
Well, I think that's put in from when they're young. You know, it's like, it's too late. Once they're being recruited, you know, you can work, but it's what you did earlier. So this one girl, she was, you know, when she was little, she was the hardest worker around, and, you know, got to a certain level. And then I can remember a year or so ago going to her and saying, you know, how's, you know, back when you were young, your work rate was here and everybody else was down here. And now that you're, you know, 16, I can't see how are you outworking those kids now? And so I think that sort of, she got motivated and she went up another gear, and, you know, and got serious about getting stronger. You know, so she got ready. So I think I did hit on later in that period, the one thing you need to do before going to the States is almost always get stronger. You know, when you're at that 17, 18, 19-year-old age and you're going to go play college basketball in the States, the players that are a year or two older, you know, they're strong. They're strong. They've been in the gym for years, you know, for a couple of years in the States, and everybody, you know, does a lot more strength work. So you got to get stronger or you get pushed around. Okay.
I think that's a very good to know. Very good to state, because, you know, my experience, a lot of the focus is solely on, hey, can I make a shot? Can I, you know, dribble the ball kind of thing. So yeah, the off court, you know, are you strong enough And even, the first season, they speak about, Europeans not being tough, or, that was one of the things about there's a common misconception about European players not being strong. So I think, getting in the weight room definitely is going to add, some value to you being recruited and being successful out there. How important is the education process? So how important is schoolwork? How important is it to be on top of your grades?
Are we saying before you go?
Yes.
Well, there's the whole, once you know that going is an option, you probably would be wise to start looking at the courses that you're taking and the requirements for getting cleared to play in the States. So there are minimum requirements, there are certain courses that are accepted, and certain grades that you need to achieve in order to be eligible for a scholarship. And it's good to try and get some advice on that to make sure that you're going to be able to get cleared. So there are a number of services around and people who can help. I know Steve Veers, she's got Next, he's done a lot to help some of the kids that we've sent in recent years. And has some contacts in the universities that can help advise people. So you reach out and you get help. If you're a good student and you're taking a normal course load, then you're not going to have any issues. You just keep working and be as do as well as you can. But if you're a marginal student, then you really need to buckle down and make sure that you can get
your grades up.
Get your grades up. But do they still? I'm not even 100% sure. There's talk of doing away with the SAT, isn't there, or no?
So currently now, I don't know when it came in, but we're in December 2020. This next school year, so 2021, you won't need your SATs or your ACTs. They're not gonna count them. Now, I don't know whether that's only just for the pandemic period or that's going forward, but I know as of next school year, that you don't need those scores. And it's the same thing with they brought in that transfer rule as well, where you can transfer D1 to D1 with no issues and all the rest of it. So there's a couple of things. Yeah, there's a couple of things coming in. So I don't know whether that's only because of the coronavirus or those are permanent changes.
Yeah, the transfer thing seems only fair, as coaches can change schools anytime they want. They don't have to sit out. But players had to sit out for a year. It made no sense.
I can just imagine a coach getting a new job and then having to sit out because he coached that.
Well, it's almost as crazy as a player having to sit out for a year.
I do as well. I guess I understand certain ideologies of it. If you've got a really good recruit and let's say you guys just missed out on the finals or whatever, you just lost in the finals, and then they go, right, well, I'm going to go and team up with someone else at an even stronger school. I mean, I think, my personal belief is some of it's on you as the coach to retain those or maintain those relationships. Make your players feel like, they're loved and the interest is about them as well. But yeah, I do think it's very, especially at high school. That's what I'm dealing with now. We've got, guys transferring and coming over, and they're like, nope, they can't play because they played last year. And I'm like, well, I mean, what, people move, situations change. Why penalize the kid? So, but yeah.
Okay.
Would you choose a better basketball school over academic school? So let me rephrase that. Would you choose a higher ranked basketball program or would you choose a higher ranked academic program in terms of, you sending a player or, advising a player to go?
This is totally about, that just is totally depends on the player.
Okay.
So for example, my daughter Renee, she could have gone to any number of schools, but she was a very, very good student. And so in her case, academics was very, very important. And she ended up going to Penn, an Ivy League school.
Mm-hmm.
Others, especially in the girls' side, if they're pretty smart, I always advise them to go to the best school they can, to get the best degree they can, because ultimately, even if they're going to play pro afterwards, the money's not so great. They're still going to need a degree at some point. But it depends on what's, there aren't really that many bad schools in terms of academics. If you're a smart kid and you're a good student, you can get a good education at many American universities. So, but that being said, some schools definitely, it's easier to find a job coming out of there if you're not going to be a pro. So, if you can go to Duke, you would go to Duke, or Harvard, or any number of top schools.
But then, okay, so let's say in the case of Renee, and she had the, Penn. I know she was looking at Harvard originally, but let's say she had the opportunity to go. Let's say UConn was recruiting Renee, top girls program, and then there's Penn. I know you say it's down on the individual, but what do you think holds more weight in your opinion? What would you say makes more sense?
Well, if you're good enough to start at UConn, then there's a big argument for going to UConn. If you're going to go sit on the bench at UConn or play at Penn, then you should go to Penn. And, Temi Fagbenle is a good example. Like she went to Harvard. She could have gone to, I think she could have gone to UConn. But, she knew the value of that degree. And she's going to play pro basketball, but it's, at some point that degree is going to come into play.
I get you. It makes sense. Okay, so going on to the sections now, like for coaches, and kind of how you'd advise coaches that are helping players. How can coaches aid the development of players that want to play in the States?
Well, that's just doing a really good job. It's like, developing them as basketball players and convincing them that they still, need to be good students, and being realistic about what their level is and where they, while they're young, never say you can't do it or you're not good enough, but just tell them if that's what you want to do, then this is what you need to do in the meantime. You're going to need to work, put the hours in, put the time in, and say, all right, well, you've made a couple steps, now let's keep working, and let's make sure that they get challenged enough to do it. So all along the way, as soon as I started to get players that were good enough, I would try not to leave the club in such a situation that they were the best player there. So that's how we started developing our pro team, because we would bring in, I brought in Rek Deng was the first woman I brought in to play with us, and then I brought in Roz Mason to go against Renee in practice, and then I brought in another one, and then
just blossomed from there.
But no kid coming through is going to be the best player in the program. They're going to be going against players that are better.
Okay, so and to that as well, what would you say the premium is in terms of, right, let's say you've got your season, Is it about them playing the majority of minutes and running the offense through them? Or is it about them, diversifying their role? So let's say if you had a big man, so to speak, and you're saying, right, well, I'm gonna teach them more about playing the guard, or giving them guard skills, which is gonna make them better but hurt your team. Like, how would you advise that sort of development? Is it, hey, we find them one thing they do really well and we hammer that home, and then that's what we sell, that's their ticket to the States? Or is it, hey, look, we're just going to develop them as a basketball player, and wherever their talent lies, that's where it lies?
Boy, that is a really tricky one. I will always try and develop them to their fullest potential. So if I have a big young player, the dream is that they become a big player that can, that could play any position, that could be like a guard. But what will happen if you don't do a good enough job is they'll go to the States, and while they're in the States, they'll get pushed into one role. So, they'll say, you're a big and you're going to play inside. That's what we need. We don't need you playing guard. I got 10 guards. So that can happen to players a lot in the States. And then, you might go there as a well-rounded guard, and they might say, well, you're just going to shoot. You just shoot. I don't want you to dribble the ball. I don't want you to do any of that. So American basketball can get very regimented, and people can get slotted into, slots. So a lot of times, I don't know if that's where we were meant to go now, but you can go to the States with a well-rounded set of skills, and you'll get forced to just rely on one, and the rest of your game will kind of wither away.
Would you say that being able to teach, or being able to help them develop that overall skill set is more beneficial, especially if they're only going into that specific role? So obviously, if I'm a big, and yes, I know how to handle, yes, I know how to move move without the ball, but when I get to college, all I'm doing is receiving duck-ins, setting screens, and all the rest of it. What should I spend the majority of my time?
Well, what's your goal? What's your dream? So, for example, and also a lot of it is the program you choose. It's like so. If I would go back to Renee's example, like she was a very well-rounded, all-around player, could score any number of ways, and went to Penn. Partly for basketball, but also for the academics, because it's such a great school. So getting there, she was, the team, the way that guy ran his program, very successful program. And, Renee was put into a very specific role. But now she's come back, and she's, didn't know she wanted to continue playing basketball, but is playing in the WBBL. And we're going into her 5th year now, I think.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's her 5th year, and she, she's now, the player that she was before she went to college, only stronger and even more, highly skilled. So she's in this year's showing it in how she's playing. She's one of the better players in the league. Yeah.
Jeez.
So you can, and I have another player Spanish player who I recruited out of Minnesota, and I know for a fact she went to America as a well-rounded, long athletic guard, could score from anywhere, and came out of Minnesota as a shooter. Shooter and defender. But I can see the other parts of the game starting to come back now.
Okay.
And so I think it's very common that people get. So you're saying, should you develop somebody to focus on an area, to go to the States? if that was their goal, that what they really wanted to do, and that was the only way they were going to get there, I'd say, look, well, all right, if you're going to go, you need to do this. We can get you a scholarship on this basis. If that's what they wanted, I would do it for them.
Okay.
But I think there are places for everything. So like a really well-rounded player, if you find the right school, then it would work that way too, and it might be more fun. So if you reach too high, though, you'll have to be very specialized, I think.
Yeah, and we've had so many talks with players that they want to get to the States, and then they get recruited, and it's not what they want. So I spoke to a kid from Spain, and he'd been playing point guard his whole life, has a growth spurt, gets to 6'8", and he goes to 3 schools, moves because he's 2 JUCOs and then 1 4-year school, and they all play him at the center, and he's never, prior to that time, he's never played center in his life. So that's kind of what, the question is, hey, if I've got a player that, hey, I can get you to a program, we can find you a school, we're going to spend 10,000 hours on drop steps and jump hooks and all the rest of it, and we'll get you a school? Or is it, or a point guard where you say, hey, you're just shooting and facilitating, you're not working on contact or, getting it, footwork. Like, that's the kind of thing. And I think for me, it's hard. This year, just now, I've had a kid over who's 6'8", 6'9", super athletic, and kind of like your philosophy of just developing overall players. I think it's good just because of IQ, them understanding what is it, even if it's a post player, vice versa, a guard understanding what a big goes through when they're posting up or whatever, or a big understanding how to manipulate a screen and getting the right angles. And a lot of the schools that are, been recruiting him, it's just like, right, we just need to stick you in the post. We need to, we need a post player. And, he's been looking at me and he's like, Coach, I just don't want to just stay down there. And
you've got to find some schools that got 7 or 8 other post players. And that wants a long guard, big guard.
Yeah. But yeah, it's always an interesting conversation, especially I believe in Europe, we use our players slightly different. As you said, it's a lot more regimented at college level, and in Europe we're more like motion and flex and 5-out positionless and all the rest of it. So definitely a lot more interesting. That was good. I like that convo. What's the best way to contact a college coach? What's the best, as I said, you're Len Busch, and you send an email and it's a done deal. But let's say there's a college somewhere, and he's found that diamond in the rough. What's the best way for him to get in contact with a college coach to recruit his player?
Email and phone calls.
Okay.
And sometimes, so you call, there are times when they'll be in the office and they'll answer the phone. So, the phone numbers are usually on the
websites.
On the websites.
Yeah.
So you call until you get a human. And then, if there's somebody sitting there, they'll talk to you. Okay. That's what I'd say. You could also, I'm trying to think. Yeah, no, that's the way. Or else they, I sometimes find they're reaching out to me because they want to ask about a player. So if you, I already have some existing relationship with coaches, so that's not everybody's way. Yeah. But the other thing would be to reach out to domestic coaches who've sent a lot of players to the States and ask them. Mm-hmm. They might actually already have a relationship with that school, or they might have a relationship with another school in the conference who they can, then go through. So there are now so many more kids going to America from the UK that it's just anybody. I think anybody who really wants to go can go pretty much somewhere, because there's so many schools in America, and they're, you know, and it's not, you're also finding, like, another topic down the road, or you might already have touched on it in some other ones, is I also see a lot more kids than in the past coming back early.
Yes, and that is that's the toss up for me. It was between, so I've already recorded some of the kids coming back, and this one, so I'm not 100% sure. I think this one, just because I think it'd get more traction, and then for next season, but that's really interesting. And the kids that I've spoken to, some are injuries, some are education-wise, some were just homesick, and some got into trouble. So I think that as well.
But also, you know yourself, I mean, America is so big, and there's just some places that you don't want to be. You know, like, or the kid, there's certain type of kid should not be in some of these places that, you know, they end up in. You know?
And definitely due to personality, and that's kind of what sparked this whole Eurostepping, is that it's a lot of the kids that you speak to, a lot of the families that you speak to, it's just like, hey coach, I want to send my son, I want to send my daughter to the States, or coach, I want to play in the States, and you know, here's my, you know, I can hit a three and I can dunk, and there's just so vast of, hey, when it's below 20 outside and it's freezing, are you gonna be able to still go to class, or are you the person that's like, I'm staying in my bed, and then you're in trouble, and now you're behind. You know, if I also
always tell them that coaches are like car salesmen. You know, like, until maybe these kids, they haven't bought a car, so it's probably not. But while you're in the process of looking at the car, you know, the car dealer, you know, he's your best friend in the world. Like, he makes you feel so special and important, and, you know, gets you a cup of coffee and everything. And then, but the minute you've taken delivery of the car, he's on to the next. You know, it's like he's done with you. And so the college coaches can be similar. You know, they talk to you, you know, sweetly while they're recruiting you, and then when they get you, you know, you're one of a bunch of players, and they got to win this year, and, you know, you got to do the role that they decide on for you. It may not be what they told you it was going to be either.
I related it to, you say car salesman, I relate it to, you know, courting. You know, when you're young and you like say all the sweet nothings and all the rest of it, and then you know, you're the biggest and the best or whatever, and, you know, a couple of months down the line, it's like, oh, it's you again, kind of thing. Like, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's definitely something that they need to be aware of. Controversial. What's the worst thing a coach can do for a player wanting to play college sports or college basketball? Oversell them.
Okay, so, you know, it's like, you know, advising them into a level or program that they're not good enough for. So, you know, it's one thing to go ahead and get the scholarship, but it's another to go somewhere where you're definitely not going to play, and you're going to get over recruited. So they might. We had a player who, you know, sometimes coaches are in rebuilding mode in the States, and or somebody gets a new job late in the season or late in the summer, and they have to get a team together for the next season. You know, players have left, you know, there's a lot of, and a new coach comes in and I need a team. So they, you know, they're going to recruit people that, you know, a year or two or three down the road, they're not going to recruit. So it would be, that's an example of a kid. So if you let one of your players go there, they have to be aware that, you know, the next year that coach is going to bring in better players. And the year after that, they're going to bring in even better players. So is your player good enough to withstand that process? And then the other one is going Div 1 when you're much better off going Div 2. Knowing that that player's not good enough to play a lot in Division 1 at the school they're going to. They can get a scholarship, they can be on the team, but they're not going to play. So that you need to be realistic with them about those things, because they're not going to be happy.
And that's placing them in the right spot. Kind of general. Would you say an objective of a good coach is to send a player to the States? So let's say when you first met me and I'm there coaching, would you say that, hey, Danny's managed to Danny's sending kids to school in the US, he's a good coach?
Boy, I think that's sending kids to the States is an outcome. So it's something that you could be good at, but whether that should be your starting point, I don't know. I think you should just want to be a good coach and, get the most out of your players and inspire them and, help them to be better people and better players. And when you get some with talent, then you talk about their opportunity to go to the States if they want. So, but I wouldn't go into it with that. So Same thing with like winning championships, so you win.
That was my next question. Yeah.
Well, those you don't have those as goals. Those are outcomes, and they're just byproducts of doing your job and doing it well. So, being a producer of college talent is, I don't know, it's like you're some kind of a factory processor or something, but we're coaches, and like it could mean you're a good coach. It could mean you just have a lot of talented kids coming through. I don't know that. So, but it would definitely tend to attract more kids who want to go because they think they can do it through you. But I think it's better as a coach to focus on being a really good coach. Just like doing a good job developing your players, making sure it's a positive experience for them, helping them realize their potential. And if one of their goals is to go to the States, then being able to help them do that is part of the job.
Well, kind of the reverse of the question is, can you be a good program? Can you be a good coach and not send players to the States?
Yes. If you're ultimately coaching young players up to the age up to 18, I think if you're motivated and you want to continue to develop professionally as a coach, then I think it's inevitable, that if you're coaching enough kids and you've got the talent of kids who will go, then you'll have kids that go to the States. So I don't think you can avoid it.
Fair enough. Okay, last couple of questions, Coach, and this has been absolutely great. Your views on college basketball. So, what's your views on the different levels of college basketball? Is junior college bad? And are you a failure if you don't go to D1? I know you kind of touched on it a little bit. You said you've sent players to all three different levels, but what's your views?
Well, junior college can be a very positive experience. It can be a necessary step on the way. So one of the reasons for going to junior college is because you didn't really get seen enough, or you feel that you might have a player that's you really think is a high D1 player, but we haven't been able to get any interest in them for that. And junior college could be a way there. Because the junior colleges in America, there are a number of programs in the US that recruit from junior colleges. They like junior college players. And they'll have them for 1 or 2 years. The other thing about junior college is it provides an avenue for kids who are unable to qualify academically before leaving. So junior college is a way, so you go to junior college and you earn grades for 2 years, and then you can go to a Division I school. So junior colleges are useful. They can be, there's good and bad, like in everything. So I've had a couple players go to junior colleges and not be developed in a way that would benefit them. It was more for the benefit of their program. And then as for the other levels, I mean, I think a lot of kids from the UK would, if their families could afford it or they could find, scholarships, I think Division III would be a real joy for them. The basketball is good. The players just aren't quite as big as in Div 2 and Div 1, but it's fun. The schools are usually very good, and it's not quite as serious. They don't own your whole life, so you're because they're not giving you a scholarship. Division 2 also can be, Kat Carr, one of the best players in the WBBL the last 7 years, has, she was a Division 2 All-American, and was, more than capable of playing Division 1, but for various reasons was under-recruited, and a good Div 2 coach said, recognized her and persuaded her to go to his school. So, and she had a great career, and she has friends to this, lifelong friends from that period in her life to this day. So I wouldn't say anything bad about Division 2. I've had players, I've advised them to go Division 2 because they'll have more fun. They'll play more. The school fits. They'll be appreciated more. I think it's very important to find the right level.
Okay, I like it.
Go on.
Well, sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to say also another one was, Sayani Clark, who plays for me. She went to junior college in the States, and that was, partly to get a better, to get more exposure.
Yeah, to get a better
offer. And she ended up at the University of Toledo and, had a good career there. So she doesn't say anything bad about junior college.
Okay. As a professional coach, you recruit players from all over, internationally and domestically. How often are those, collegiate graduates? How often do they come back and, are really good players for the league, or, would you still choose a American import or wherever over, a kid that's been there and gone through the system and come back?
Yes. So American players from the right program who play significant minutes are going to be very, very good in our league. Okay. I've had, I sometimes feel I have an advantage over some of the other coaches in the league because I know the states and I know the conferences and I know the schools. And so if somebody, a couple of years ago, I got a letter about a player who was at LSU, graduating from LSU. I looked her up and saw that she played and, averaged maybe 10 points a game. And I took her immediately because I knew she was playing in the SEC. She was playing minutes. The team was decent, and she'd be good for us. And so I took her, and she was great. I had her for a year, and then this year, taking the Spanish player, Irene Garrido. She came out of the University of Minnesota. I checked the stats. I looked at the video, and I said she could definitely play in our league. There's no way. So the right school, the right conference, actually playing, I would take, so take a big conference player will do well in our league, as long as they're playing.
Okay. What about the domestic kids that go and come back? Are they as sought after? Do you think they're better than the kids that don't go to the States at the professional level?
Well, we don't have a lot of I don't have a lot of experience with kids who don't go to the States and come back to play professionally at this moment.
Okay.
So there might be some going forward. My players are sort of they're sort of starting to come back.
Mm-hmm.
So, we had, Renee came back, Millie Stevens joined us this year. I've got a few more good ones coming out over the next couple years, and some of them might come back and play for us. So I'm expecting them to be similar to Renee, stronger, probably a bit put in a silo, American style, and we'll bring them out of that and get them back to being complete basketball players.
And how do they compare to the domestic players that don't go to the States? When you're
well, they're better. So they go because they're better, and they come back, they're still better.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're better than they were as well. So yeah.
Does extremely talented player have to go to college in the States to be successful?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. I think more often than not they want to, but I don't think they have to. I think they could. There are domestic options now. Mm-hmm. So right now we're sort of seeing like I've had 3 or 4 players over the last 2 years who've chosen to go to UK universities instead of the States, and they could have gone to the States. Nice. Not really high level players, but they could have gotten something in the States. Mm-hmm. And I think there's going to be more of those because of some improved facilities here. They're starting to give a little bit of money, but not full scholarships by any means. Mm-hmm. Until they do that, they won't get the best because the free education is the issue.
Top trumps.
But they have started, like Holly, at Leicester.
Yes.
I think she's getting scholarship now. So she's going to get her degree. So maybe it's possible. I don't think any other university was willing to do that. So Loughborough might be ahead of the curve there.
Yeah. Last 2. Can you give me the negatives of going to play basketball in the States?
What it would be, it may not be your best interest. The player's best interest might not be the coach and program's best interest. So,
okay.
So the coaches in the States need to win, and they're under their job's under pressure, and there might be political stuff going on behind the scenes, so that you don't know about, and so you need to be responsible for your own development, is what I would say. So you could go there, and if you're expecting them to do everything for you and make you into this player that you dream of becoming, it may not happen. You might not even, you might not play the position that's best for you. You might not get the part of your game developed that you need developed if you want to have a career in basketball. So you got to be aware of the business side of basketball in the States.
I think that's big. I think that's another part, and hopefully, especially with this series, this season, I hope that can really come across, because they need to understand that, hey, a lot of these coaches, this is their livelihood. This is how they feed their families. This is how they pay their mortgage. And you're a part of that. You're a cog in the system in terms of, hey, if you do well, and even if you're not even a starter, you being in practice and being in shape and going, helping to get those guys that get predominant minutes, getting them better, being available, not having, not giving them any stress, is all a part of, what you bring to the table of what they're ultimately paying for. And, if things are going bad, let's say you as a player have a bad day or a bad couple of weeks, then the coaches, sometimes they're quite happy to say, all right, well, I'm going to move on because you're not doing what I need you to do. So I think that's a big thing that, a lot of these young men and young women need to understand, is that it's not just, they're not just giving out scholarships because you like you. There's more to it than that. It's what can you do for them in a sense as well. Coach, last question, man. And as I said, I've really enjoyed this. What advice would you give to someone between the ages of 14 to 18 who dreams to play basketball in the States? What's your closing thoughts, for those who are watching this now and listening to what's the big takeaways?
Well, they should sit down with somebody who knows something about the process of getting to the States and is familiar with the level of basketball in the States, and then talk how they could achieve that goal, like what they need to do. What are the next steps? What's the realistic possibilities for them, and what they need to do to make it come true. Whether that's get in the gym, whether that's work a lot harder, whether it's developing some aspect of their game, whatever it might be, take some steps. I would never tell them no, though. I would never say it's impossible. I would say if this is what you want to do, then these are the steps. This is what we got to do.
That's good. Do you ever think have you ever met a kid that wanted to play in the States, and in your hearts of hearts, you was like, look, unless you grow 2 feet and have you ever met anyone that you've been pretty certain it's a no?
Yes, but I still wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say it because what happens is they'll get to that realization themselves if that's the case.
Okay.
And they get there by, they're going, well, they're playing on a team and, there's 5 people better than them, obviously, and those 5 aren't going to the States. Something along those lines, but they tend to come to their own realization, and I've seen some who then say, no, I don't really want to go to the States. I'm going to go to UK University and play there, or I'm not going to play, or whatever. But they arrive at that point on their own.
Fair enough. Coach, as I said, absolute pleasure. Thank you for hanging out with us today. It's been really insightful. And again, my own personal thanks for your influence and what you've done for me over the years. It's been great.
It's been a pleasure. And if I can help anybody, I'm always willing to talk to anybody about the process. My name is Len Busch, and you've been watching the Eurostepping with Daniel Gale. If you're interested in going to the States to play basketball, then you should be watching this show.
Appreciate you watching the Eurostepping.
I want to thank everybody for watching Eurostepping.
Watching the Eurostepping.
The Eurostepping.
The Eurostepping.
You've been watching the Eurostepping.
The Eurostepping.
Eurostepping.
You've been watching the Eurostepping, a great podcast show hosted by Coach D.